Hi everybody. So in this video we will try to understand psychoanalysis. So this video is going to be very helpful if you are preparing for UGC NET and also if you're a student of postgraduate or undergraduate, then this video is for you as well. So in this video we will try to understand what is psychoanalysis and how does psychoanalysis or psychoanalytic criticism influences literature and also the techniques, some of the techniques through which we understand literature. Hana? Now, the first important writer in psychoanalysis is Sigmund Freud. So when we begin reading the psychoanalysis, we start with Sigmund Freud, right? Also, psychoanalysis itself is a kind of therapy, which aims to cure mental disorders by investigating the interaction of the conscious and unconscious. We will come to that, what is conscious and what is unconscious, because Freud is pretty much interested in the unconscious part of our brain. Anyway, so Freud, he's basically, he was a founder of the psychoanalysis and he had a Jewish background. Also, he lived in Vienna until the Nazi occupation in 1938. So he was a kind of psychoanalyst working especially in the quarter, or let's say in the half of the 20th century, in the mid of the 20th century, sorry. And he was a private practitioner and he had a specialty in neurology. So initially he was a neuroscientist, but then he started practicing his ideas, his thoughts, his psychoanalysis, so-called, on the patients. And he's known for the psychoanalysis including the theory of id, ego, superego, Oedipus complex, repression and defense mechanism. And we will look at each one of them and we'll try to understand what he's talking about and how to implement these ideas, these interpretation into literature. So the Freud, he was mainly concerned with the unconscious. So to talk about Freud, when we talk about Freud, we always talk about the unconscious, because Freud was deeply, he was deeply into the unconscious. He was trying to understand how the dream works, how the unconscious mind works. So we can say this is a practice. The psychoanalysis is a practice based upon the scientific theories of our mind. And he deals with the sexuality that we will also, look upon. So we can say the Freud's work depends upon the unconscious, which is a part of our mind, and it is beyond the conscious, which nevertheless has a strong influence on our actions, such as it comes from it has a repository of traumatic experiences, fears, repressed desires, etc. So whatever action we take, whatever we do in our daily lives, is basically comes from our traumatic experiences, fears, repressed desires, which are saved in our unconscious brain. Okay. And these compressed desires are the repression in Freudian terms. So if they ask you who coined the term repression or what do we mean by the repression in psychoanalysis, then you can simply say it is a compressed desire or compressed thoughts, compressed, let's say, our experiences that we could not, bring forward. So the repression is basically the compressed desire of our thoughts. Now, the Freud, he was fundamentally concerned with the articulation of the sexuality in language. So when we discuss psychoanalysis through the lens of Sigmund Freud, we are going to talk about sexuality, how sexuality influences our thoughts, how sexuality influences our ideas. Hana? Now, he talks about the level of awareness that we have through our conscious and subconscious mind. So he concluded there are three different levels. One is conscious, second is preconscious, and third is unconscious. Now id is basically it resides completely at the unconscious level, and same as an iceberg. So iceberg is the bigger chunk of iceberg is always submerged into the water, right? So you can understand this id as an iceberg, which is our unconscious part. And also, it is the most inaccessible and obscure part of our personality. So, every human being has their own personality and their unconscious personality, which is hidden, which is obscure, and we can never understand it because these are the repressed desires, these are the repressed memories. Also, the act under the pleasure principle, it act under the pleasure principle, and this pleasure principle is based upon sexuality, you know, which is completely biased ideology. If you read more literary theory and criticism, then in multiple books I have seen the reference that he was basically biased on man, biased on female sexuality, right? And also the reps, receptacle of our libido and the primary source of our psych energy. So libido again is a very important term. This is basically a sexual desire, or let's say the energy, the sexual energy that he talks about. And then immediate gratification, not willing to compromise. Let's say that you have a child of 1 to 2 years of age, so you would find a peculiar behavior in them. They do not understand anything, they do not have this moral sense or moral purpose. They just want, if they want something, they will just have it, and they will cry for that particular thing. Let's say if he is hungry, he want the food. If he wants the food, he will take it. He would not think about whether it's night, whether it's day, whether it's morning, whether it's evening. And if he wants to play with toys, he will definitely take it. This is the immediate gratification, and he's not willing to compromise with it. If he wants it, he will take it, and you can't do anything about it. So this is what id does. This is what a personality of id is. It always happens in the younger child, and it is unconscious because it does not have the moral and ethical perspectives. On the other hand, if you have a grown child, then he or she might have already developed this ethical and moral perspectives, and then he would know what is right and what is wrong. But of course, in a child, you won't find that kind of compromise. Then comes the personality of superego, and this is the conscious of an individual. So this superego is a conscious part of our human brain, and it has the moral and the ideal part of our personality. So this is where the child has already developed his personality of moral and ethical behavior. He knows the difference between the moral and difference between immoral. And also it begins forming at the age of 4 to 5 years of age. So in the previous slide, we have seen what is id. So id is where the child does not compromise. If he wants something, he will take it, and he does not think about the moral and ethical perspective. For instance, if there is a workplace, so in a workplace, a child with superego personality, he would not eat because he knows that this is a workplace and this is not a time to eat. But a child won't think about it because he does not understand that. And next is ego. Ego is basically, it presents at all levels of awareness. So we have learned 3 levels of awareness. One is id, second is superego, third is ego. And also we have learned there is a conscious brain, and then there was a subconscious brain. Let me see, just a second. Preconscious brain. So then there is a preconscious brain, and then there is an unconscious brain. It's also present in the conscious part. It also presents in the preconscious and unconscious part. And this awareness, this level of awareness, it operates under reality principle. So what is real? Mostly it focuses on the realism, what is happening in front of us, what we see, what we observe, what we do. And also it negotiates between id and superego. So we find in id, we are not negotiating. The personality of id, especially in the child, it does not negotiate. If he wants something, he will take it. But here, ego is present in almost every part of our personality, and it always tries to, let's say, negotiate with id and superego. So superego is simply the moral perspective, moral and ethical part, where our mind is already developed and it negotiates between id. So it tells id that this is a place where we're supposed to be learning and not eating. And then that conscious awareness is basically what ego is. Ego tells you what is right and what is wrong. So ego differentiates between right and wrong. And then he talks about the conflicts of personality, in which he talks about the slip of tongue. So the slip of tongue, it's also called the Freudian slip, which Freud himself called the parapraxis. Parapraxis, parapraxis. So he said that whenever there is a repressed material in the unconscious, it actually comes out in everyday phenomenon as a slip of tongue, or let's say slip of unintended action. For instance, if you're thinking bad about someone and you do not want to say bad words to that particular person, but while unconsciously you just slip it out, and you just say the bad words, and it comes like unconsciously. You're not supposed to say it, but it just comes out, so this is called the slip of tongue. So whatever you meant inside your brain, whatever you thought inside your brain, whatever you have, whatever you think about the person, any particular person in your brain, and it just comes out as a slip of tongue. So this is called the Freudian slip. Now he talks about the interpretation of dreams, how dream works. Basically in the basic fundamental way, we can understand that all the repressed desire, all the repressed memory comes together, and then it transforms into a dreams. And then there is anxiety and jokes. Now there is a psychosexual development that is present in our personality. That is also a part of our personality, and this is basically inspired by the Freud's idea of libido. And libido is basically eros. Eros means love, you can say, or this eros is also a kind of energy which comes from the sexual desire. And there are basically three stages in the classical Freudian theory, but we will try to understand all these four stages of his ideas. First is the oral stage that happens between 0 to 2 years, and in this stage the child actually does everything with his mouth. For instance, sucking milk from his or her mother's breast. So everything he does, he find pleasure by sucking, he find pleasure by using his mouth. And then there is an anal stage, which is from 2 to 4 years of age. And then there is a phallic stage, which is from 4 to 5 years of age. This is quite interesting. In the phallic stage, what Freud says is that you start developing your let's say moral and ethical antiquity. You start learning about what is moral, what is ethical, what is right, what is wrong. And then there is a genitalia stage, which begins with the time of puberty. So you can also say this is a puberty state. And this is where this libido, the idea of eros, comes forward. So in the phallic stage, Freud talks about the Oedipus complex, which is, it conceives the incestuous longing for the mother, unconscious desire to eliminate the father, sees the father as a rival. So Oedipus complex is basically a term came from the Oedipus Rex. Oedipus Rex is a play where Oedipus killed his own father and married his own mother. So in the same way, in Freudian theory, in the Freudian Oedipus theory, in the Freudian Oedipus complex, what happens is that the male child, he is unconscious, he has an unconscious desire to eliminate his father and to have a sexual intercourse with his own mother. So father becomes the rival here. And he says that throughout the fantasy and the overt behavior, he exhibits his sexual longing for the mother. So this is an Oedipus complex where a child is sexually attracted towards their mother. So even in the regular life, you would see that the majority of the male child is attracted towards their own mother, and the female child is attracted towards their own father. Maybe he got this idea from there. Anyway, and the second is Electra complex, which is a female version of the phallic stage that Carl Jung explained in the 1930s. So it's basically the overt in Electra complex. What happens here is that the child, the female child, the girl child, she has the unconscious desire to eliminate his own mother, on her own mother, and to marry, or let's say to have a sexual intercourse with his own father. And this is something that Freud came up, how when he was actually a kind of working on a patient. So if you have this book called Beginning Theory, by Peter Barry, you will find it. There's an evidence that he talks about. So he was actually working on a case which is known to be a Dora case, or you can simply search it on Google. You will find that how he came up with this Electra and Oedipus complex myth. Now, there are some of the important works written by Freud that UGC may directly ask you, or they will give you a couple of 4 to 5 different works, and they will ask you to put it in order. So the first important work is Studies on Hysteria, which was co-authored by the Joseph Brewer in 1895. Next, The Interpretation of Dream. 3 essays on the theory of sexuality, and then 5 lectures on the psychoanalysis, and then Beyond the Pleasure Principle, again very important work. The Ego and the Id, 1923, and The Civilization and its Discontents, 1935. They have already asked questions from here, and from here. Okay. Anyway, I hope you find this lecture helpful. So if you find this helpful, and if you have any queries, please do write your comments down below. And if you also want me to make a video on a certain topic, then please let me know. And thanks for watching. See you in the next one.